Welcome to Dear Sandy. I'm Sandy Galiff, a member of the New York State Assembly, representing parts of northern Westchester and parts of Putnam County. And I have to tell you, my district is so beautiful. And today we're going to talk about a beautiful piece of property, a wonderful architectural home that's right in Garrison, which is in Putnam County in the town of Phillipstown. And we're going to talk about Manitoga today. And I have as my guest Allison Cross, who's the Executive Director of Manitoga. And I welcome you so much.
Thank you very much. Delighted.
I recently, in the paper, there was an indication that Manitoga is one of the tourist destination for architectural homes, people that really are into architecture. You don't have to really be into architecture to go and see Manitoga, but I thought that was such a great designation.
Yeah. It is, well, it's one of the few modern house museums that is open to the public in New York State, and it is certainly a destination for those interested in architecture, in landscape, and actually the integration of the two. And that's what's very special about Manitoga.
Right. It's so nice, and everybody needs to go there so to visit you. But tell me about the whole, this is a piece of property in 9D in Garrison, kind of near where the Bear Mountain Bridge travels over the Hudson River. What did it start out as?
Well, when Russell Wright, who created Manitoga, the house and landscape, he and his wife purchased the property in 1942. Prior to that, it had been a logging site and then a quarry. So when he discovered it or was looking at properties, it had been abandoned for probably more than 20 years. So it was a former industrial site that had been abandoned and was really a ravaged landscape at that time.
It's hard to imagine it. As our program opened, I know there was a background of beautiful foliage, many, many different colors. And I think that comes from the property.
Right. So I had mentioned earlier, it was actually called King's Quarry, and the house itself is situated on one of the large, what was the quarry pit. Above a 500-foot incline at the tip of the 75-acre property is another crater that is called Lost Pond. And that fills in with water naturally, and the water releases. And then the landscape, Russell Wright left on its own, so that you come upon it, and the image was of a resplendent fall day, so you could see the oranges and the yellows, and there's oak and maple and dogwoods, and it is intended to be discovered. That's why it's called Lost Pond. So you're hiking the trails and you enter it through a laurel tunnel of sorts, and then you come upon this magic solitary moment. It's really quite beautiful.
How many acres?
75.
75 acres. So the house is in the more central part of the acreage, or
no,
not?
In fact, the house is on the lower, the basin of the property. So the house is here, say, and then the property goes like this, and Lost Pond is up on the other end, very near to the connection to the Appalachian Trail. So it's about 3 to 4 acres is where the home and studio and the Quarry Pool Path, which is part of the visitor experience, is located. And then to go up to Lost Pond is about a half a mile hike.
So tell us about Russell Wright. I for so long knew about Frank Lloyd Wright. I don't even think they were related.
No, they're not related.
No. So you have, but they were functioning somewhat at the same time, or not?
Overlapping.
They were
a bit.
overlapping.
Of course, Frank Lloyd Wright was a few generations earlier, but Russell Wright was influenced by Frank Lloyd Wright and by his organic modernism. And in fact, Russell Wright visited Frank Lloyd Wright's home in Wisconsin, in Taliesin, as it's called. And we have correspondence, one letter from Frank Lloyd Wright. And Russell Wright indicated that he shared the plans of Manitoga with Frank Lloyd Wright, who approved them, which made him quite happy because he was a follower. So though they're both from the Midwest, and there was a certain sensibility and appreciation of land and landscape and the relationship of architecture to nature and landscape, so that there was certainly a synergy there.
There really was.
Yeah.
And the openness of all of their houses and so on. So Russell Wright was really becoming so important in the 50s, would you say? 50s, 60s?
Well, even earlier.
Russell
than Wright, the landmark or the classic Russell Wright product, American Modern, launched in 1939. Okay, so Russell Wright was born in 1904, died in 1976. Manitoga, the house, dates from the mid-50s, but his professional career began really in the late 20s, early 30s. He introduced the spun aluminum line, which was using aluminum and bamboo and rattan, and it introduced this new modern material to young Americans. And he and Mary, his wife, who was his business partner, marketed it as this new material for a new lifestyle. So that really put his name out there.
Because it just even going through his home, you realize how he used so many different kind of textures. So I guess that's what he was doing, was combining things that probably had not been combined before. Yes.
Absolutely.
Right.
And he was a master of this experimentation and this juxtaposition. And for example, he began in ceramics, so American Modern is, as I said, 1939. He buys the property in 1942, so not long after.
Right.
So then he begins working the land. He continues in his lifetime to design at least 11 different designs for the home. And designs meaning lines, okay? Furniture and objects for the table.
Was he doing most of his designing at his home?
No, in New York
Manitoga?
City.
He was in the city.
So for a very long time it was city profession, country home, though he was inspired by and certainly kept notes and wrote and sketchbooks when he was in Garrison. And then it really wasn't until the mid-60s that he moved to Manitoga full-time as a residence, and at that time his practice started winding down. But he had a very full career from, as I said, the early 1930s until the mid-60s.
So he said the early products then, were they the dishes and the vases and all of those? Was that the first start of what he was designing?
Well, stepping back, what's also interesting about Russell Wright is he started in theater. So he was a theater designer for a bit. It's where he met Mary. They met at the Maverick Festival near Woodstock. And he did that for a few years and then moved into designing product. First, objects for the home. And as I said, the spun aluminum was one of his early lines. Oceana, he worked in wood, then moved into ceramics. But in the early years, he also designed furniture. So there was the American Modern Furniture line,
which is pretty much coming back today.
Yes, so that there's this, it was wood, it was blonde wood, and we believe Mary coined the term blonde for light wood, and it was, we're sitting in these chairs, it was smoothed corners, some of it on casters. It was very simple and not decorative.
Right. Not upholstered.
Not
the
upholstered.
same way.
Not the same way as what had been in your mother's or grandmother's house, right? So it was, as with the whole modernism movement, leaving behind decoration and pattern and lots of material and as he said in his book, 40 pieces of china, right? And simplifying it.
But he used quite a bit of color.
Yes, he did.
Even though he used wood and so on, but he also, it seemed like the seats of chairs and things like that, there was a lot of color.
He introduced a new palette, and an exciting palette that was outside of what had been before. Grays and greens and chutney, and actually colors that were inspired by nature. So he took, perhaps we say he took patterning or decor off of the plate, but then he had these striking colors of chartreuse, similar to your sign. And what was so novel is he and Mary invited you to mix and match. So it was really the first time that you mixed colors.
Oh, you didn't have all white dishes.
One. You could.
You could.
But you didn't have to.
Right.
And how exciting not to.
Right.
And that's what, at the house today, when visitors come, we have a table set. And it's a bit of a mix and match so that you can see those colors.
It's such an interesting house because you do have periodically receptions there. I think basically during the summer, is it, or fall, or whatever.
We try, because we're open spring through the fall. So we try to have, in addition to the public tours, but a few signature events that celebrate the seasons, because that was very much part of Manitoga, because the house with the expanses of glass, the outdoors was part of it, seamlessly integrated. So in the spring and then in the summer and fall, as the color changes outside, it activates the house differently.
Right, because it's kind of interesting to be there and to kind of think back, with all of his friends that would have come for his cocktail parties or whatever that he had out there. And his house is on so many different levels, I guess because of the quarry and how it's built and so on. It's just fascinating. And to see, I don't know, I think I remember a bathroom that had bark on the door. I believe, or maybe it was in his workroom.
It was in his studio. And it was the guest room. And it is a beautiful door that on one side is birch bark.
Right.
And then on the other is white formica.
Right.
So that
and it was the
different.
Formica age too.
Exactly. It was just coming in. And that
Right.
gets, so it's wonderful, Sandy, because we had said earlier this juxtaposition of old and new, of nature and man-made, and that door, so it's bark on one side and then the newest material, Formica on a door, white and smooth and machine made. So he was celebrating both and displaying both, and in a very innovative and exciting way, and saying you can live with these materials, but let's temper them, or let's combine them, which was a little bit unlike some of the other modernists, if you think of the Bauhaus. But for him, there was always that connection to nature, and the influence of his travels to Japan and Southeast Asia.
Right. He really had the Japanese feeling. Did he travel a lot there? And that's really, did that influence a lot of the products that he had, or
later
his
on?
Lifestyle?
Later on, because we'll see, and I don't know that we have images of those, and that's one of the things that's, I think, yet to be discovered about Russell Wright, because many people know the American modern, the simple ceramics in these wonderful colors. There's later lines, and one with the Knowles Esquire, where the forms are very much influenced by Japanese design, and that they're delicately detailed with grasses. So there's a grass pattern, and there's a Queen Anne's lace pattern, but the that's what I'm looking for. The type of surface on them and the colors are very much influenced by Japanese design.
Are they still making his products?
Two of them. American Modern are reissued, and that line is made in California by Bauer, and then the Melamine, which was his line called Residential, one of the first plastics, and for that he won the Museum of Modern Art's Good Design Award in 1946. That's being reissued by a company out of Boston, Bob's Your Uncle, and the other ones not yet. but I'm sure
They
that
may come along.
They may
yes.
come along.
And actually, I mean, people are really the trends. I mean, our trends in architecture and our trends in what we want on our tables, they're all changing. And just thinking what you said about the mix and match.
Yeah.
Mix and match seems to have come along. They're actually mix and match stores.
That's right. That's right. Or I forgot what you call, but open stock, right?
Right,
So you can
yes.
buy different things, and they because at the time it was Russell and Mary, they heralded that. They heralded the open plan, the kitchen open to the dining area. What we
Right.
see at Manitoga, we have a great room.
Right.
And these were all. Then this is 1950s. It was very
Right. And
early.
we didn't have them then.
No,
they
not here.
can't- Right.
And so, and then of course there was some of that beginning on the West Coast. And then I get back, and that's one of the things I find very unique about Manitoga and Russell Wright is that the indoor-outdoor, to the extent that he lived it, is less common on the East Coast because, of course, the weather.
Right.
But he embraced it, and it was part of his living.
I'm thinking, I mean, we have cold winters and had cold winters in the 40s and 50s, and he's living there in the
Big
midst
fireplace.
of all of it, right?
Big central fireplace, according to his daughter Annie Wright, often or on all of the time. There's something about that and all of the stones inside, the granite
Right.
that heat up. They
Right.
get damp too, but they do heat up with a fire. And
He actually has, he was probably one of the early people to put a green roof on his house.
He did that.
And we're starting to do much more of that
Sure.
here in our state. And that's kind of an insulator too, to make sure that your heat doesn't
escape.
or in the summer to kind of cool it down.
Well, along with that, I mean, the whole Manitoga, which actually means place of great spirit, he named it that in celebration of Algonquin words, is a reclamation. It's land reclamation, which now is so important, but he very early on was taking an abandoned quarry, reclaiming it, celebrating indigenous landscapes of the Hudson Highlands. So he was a forerunner of that. Along with that are these flat grass
Grass roofs?
Yes, green roofs.
Right, green. They've got grass.
Yes. So it
Sit
was
on grass.
all really important and visionary.
Right.
He
It
was a visionary.
Really, absolutely was. So, does the land, from the history, did he reassemble any of the land there, the rocks, try to get the water steered in a different direction?
Yes,
Did he
well,
do
he
a
did
lot
do
of
that.
that landscaping?
He did quite a bit, but the bones were left alone. I mean, the quarry pit, he did blast out to create the kitchen of the house, and he writes, we don't know exactly, and it's some investigation that we're doing, he writes about redirecting the mountain stream. So he moved the mountain stream, he designed a waterfall that then fed the quarry
Right.
pit. He dammed it, and he created a swimming hole.
Right.
Because
Well,
that didn't exist.
He's an artist.
That's
he was
right.
an artist, so he was an artist both in his house
Yes.
and outside his house, which was amazing. I had the opportunity to go to one of your events that you had where you had music all around the house, but around everywhere. It was the most fantastic event, and I think people really need to target that and get to there, because I had no idea how many people were there, because there were people sitting all these different ledges all around the property. Nobody was in mass. They were just people, and we're all listening to the beautiful music with the different sounds. I'm not sure, I imagine the music sounded a little differently on one side versus the other side, and it was so marvelous. So tell us about that kind of program.
Yes, and I'll give credit again to Russell Wright's creativity, because in his lifetime...
Did he do that?
He had not quite that, but he had music. and
Right.
dance, and had
Right.
planned before his passing days of music and dance at Manitoga, because he wanted an intimacy with place and with nature. And so I'm going into my fourth year. My second year initiated an artist residency program, which was an invitation to composers, choreographers, visual artists, depending, to have a dialogue with Manitoga and to create something new. So that it's an effort to celebrate the legacy, but to bring it all to the present day and to bring community there for what I call a transformative experience. Music, concerts, art does that, and it's communal in an experience that is truly unique.
Right.
So
I've never been to an experience like that.
wasn't it wonderful?
Oh, it was absolutely great.
And then
Absolutely great.
the everything comes together. We've been fortunate over the past 3 years for most of our events to have great weather, but I will
Okay.
tell you, we've had a gathering in a thunderstorm, and it's just as wonderful, though I'm not wishing that upon us when we have 150 people around the quarry
Right.
pool. But we're moving towards an annual fall performance, right? So we have in the spring an installation of sorts, and then in the fall we have a performance, so music or dance. And as I said, the goal is to have a unique or a new composition or a combination of that presented on site, so that it brings all of that together. And Ben Neal was the composer, actually last year, of a piece called Manitoga, and then he came back and he produced this performance for us.
So is there, when you talk about the artist in residence, those are the artists often that would be a part of the program?
And they're invited. It usually comes out of a conversation. Melissa McGill was our first artist who did a sound piece in 2014. Stephen Talasnik, which you experienced during the concert. They were floating reed
I couldn't
pieces.
figure out sometimes where the music was coming from. I really didn't. I hear music. I see some people that might be playing it. I wasn't sure, but I thought I heard more over here. Is that what
we
was
had
going on?
We had
You had
15 musicians for this particular performance, and this one piece was Terry Riley's In C, and which actually is a cornerstone of modern music. So 1964 was the date that it was first performed.
Right.
Terry Riley is still alive. Every time, and what's so wonderful about it, every time the piece is performed, it's different because, and forgive me, music experts, my very simple example is Row, Row, Row Your Boat, where someone starts and someone picks up, and then so these, it could be from 5 to 54 musicians, and they're all playing at their own choice, but they're listening to each other.
Right.
And then they're supposed to come together and go apart at different times. So it was unique to that day, to that site, to those groups of those players, and the music was bouncing off the quarry walls.
Right.
So you didn't, and there was some but very limited amplification. So it changed.
Right.
And it was a happening of
It
sorts.
was absolutely a happening,
And then we had Todd Reynolds, who was invited by Ben Neal, who is a violinist, and he composed a site-specific piece. So he was on the violin at a different part on the living room terrace, and he had, and you may have heard in his composition, he had recordings of Russell Wright speaking about design.
Yes,
And I didn't know, it was a surprise. So, there you are
okay.
sitting in the landscape and you hear Russell Wright being interviewed.
Right.
So it was really great, and it's meant to be that
Right.
magic moment.
It is wonderful. Yeah. So for people to find out about this event or your cocktail parties or hiking.
Yes.
People just come, I guess, and hike, right, in the area?
Yes, visitmanitoga.org is
Okay.
where we list all of our events. We try to get them in local papers so that the community is aware. And we have some radio spots as well, so that so backing up, we'll keep your eyes out for the opening of the art installation, which is in the spring, in May, when the tours kick off.
Right.
And then we have some special sunset tours, which is something that I would recommend later in the day. So you're on site at what I call the bewitching hour, right before sunset. And those tours end with a glass of wine in the house, which is rather nice.
Right.
And then we have the fall performance, which is usually the last Saturday of September. So, and that's what you
Right.
did experience.
So people need to watch out for that. You're
That's
just
right.
such a hidden treasure.
Yes.
And in many, I mean, it's such a hidden site. There is a sign outside now on 90 to let you know, but you really wouldn't know. As you drive around, as you drive on 90, you don't see anything, do you, from the road?
You don't see, we have the sign, Manitoga, which was newly designed, and then there's a gentle path that goes up, and no, it's an unfolding. There's that balance. Of course, we don't want to be completely hidden because we want people to experience
Right.
Manitoga. But that there's the balance of welcoming more visitors, but maintaining that sense of it being a sanctuary, of it not being overrun or perhaps overpopulated.
Right.
That our tour experience is small, only 12 people at a time. Our performances, as you noted, even though there were 150 people there,
wouldn't have known.
you wouldn't know
Right.
because the space is
Right.
rather vast and there's small pockets of people gathered together.
Well, they were sitting on rocks.
On rocks, on moss, on blankets,
whatever.
There were a few box seats where you were, on the upper terrace, which was
I was sitting on a stone.
You
I
were.
think.
You were a
Oh,
stone
no,
bench.
Actually,
You were.
I was on a bench, but on a stone. Right.
That's right.
It was fascinating.
That's right.
It
And
just
that
really
was the
great.
Moon Terrace, named such because outside of Russell Wright's studio, he would sit out there and watch the full moon
Oh, right.
on the
Right.
quarry pool. So
So are there any special plans, anything you're especially working on as we finish up?
well, I'd like to, for those who can visit us in 2016, our resident artist will be Peter Bynum, and he will install a series of illuminated paintings within the house, which is a little different from what we've done in the past 2 years, where the installations have been outside. So that will enhance the experience of being at Manitoga. We have a summer and design camp for young children, which is very popular, which is usually in early July coming up. There'll be a series of artist-led tours. There will be music. And,
You have a lot on your agenda.
we do.
Yes.
We have a lot happening.
Right.
So, and there's one other thing I will add, which you may have had the opportunity to see, the spun aluminum exhibition inside the house. So we've begun an exhibition of Russell Wright designed products
Right.
within the house itself.
It's great.
Okay.
Thank you so much,
You bet.
Allison.
My
Lots
pleasure.
of good luck at Manitoga.
All right. Thank
I would
you.
encourage everybody to get yourself on 9D and go see Manitoga when the weather is nice starting in the spring. Thank you all very, very much for watching. And if you have any questions, give me a call at 914-941-1111. Thank you again.